Testing, testing, testing. All right. I think you have my audio now. Can you all hear Neil? No? I don't see it coming across here, so.
Oh,
All right. Try now.
test, test, test.
All right. I think we got it now. Sorry for that.
Quality content. I can hear you. Uh,
Okay, there. Hey, goodness gracious. Windows and OBS are not cooperating anymore. I apologize, everybody, for the minor technical glitch there in the setup. But I've had this problem where when I switch audios around, for whatever reason, from a default perspective in Windows, it blows up OBS, and that's what happened here. So I apologize for that. So let me kick the show back off. So hello everybody, welcome to Ashcon 2021 Day 2. Brought to you by Flat Hat Games, and I am Jesse, and with me as always is my good friend and co-host Neil. We're back here with more content for Ashcon here.
it's a big week.
It is a big week for Ashes.
Big week of content.
Yes, huge week for content in Ashes. And I want to just say thank you to everybody that participated in the stream yesterday, everybody that's participating today. We do have a vote going for a few more minutes here. It is on a timer, so if you want to get your vote in for either Redking or IMABUNNEH here, just hit the exclamation vote and then space and then either capital R for Redking or capital I for IMABUNNEH. We have an international match today, but yesterday's match was super hype. It was super fun to watch and was loaded full of surprises that was really shocked to see how that all played out.
Yeah,
yesterday.
It was cool.
So I'm sure we're in for another doozy today.
Deck was like very different.
Because if anybody knows Redking in this chat, or anybody that's new to Ashes doesn't know Redking, know that Redking is the master of weird combo deck builds, is what I'm going to call it. He tends to really find ways to push the fringe limits of cards that other people would consider unplayable. So I'm really excited to see what he's crafted for Ashcon, because I'm sure it's going to be pretty crazy. And I'm looking forward to it. It's also really cool because this is an international event for us, which means that both of these players are hailing from the United Kingdom. And so we get a chance to show you a little bit of what Ashes looks like across the pond, which is super exciting also.
Yeah, this is probably like the correct time frame for them too, right?
Yeah, it is. It's
5 hours one way.
Right. I think it's 5 or 6 hours. So it's like somewhere between 7 and 8 o'clock at night for them. So it's like prime time for them while we're in the middle of the day. So that works out great for this coverage as well. We're going to really quickly here transition in Nick from Flat Hat Games, who is lead developer and designer of Ashes Reborn. Super excited to have him on board. He is going to be one of your commentators today alongside Neil for today's matchup. We are waiting for the Red King and IMABUNNEH to get their match set up on Ashteki, and then we'll jump over to that match as soon as it's available. But we'll bring Nick in, get his thoughts from yesterday while we're waiting for that, and then we'll get the game started as soon as the players have everything set up and ready to go. All right. I'm going to go join Nick. Neil, we'll see you soon. All right, Nick, can you hear me? Baby? Nick, are you there? Now, did Discord break? Possible my Discord broke. That would be just my luck as well. All right, here we go. There. Discord also broke with my audio problems. So,
well, Discord is really aggressive when it comes to like mic and speakers. It like just takes them over as soon as you start it up.
So our poll closes for this match. We're going to get the results of the poll here in just a second to see who chat voted for, Red King or IMABUNNEH. Looks like we'll see how that works out. We're on a timer with these now, Christian. So yeah, they're not open indefinitely. The reason I do that is so that I don't have to manage it on the back end on top of everything else.
Because in the past, we've had them go like into the beginning of the game. And I think that's cheating.
So
just like watch the first couple turns and you're like, oh yeah,
now I'm going to pick. Yeah. Nick, how are you today, man?
Doing well.
Good.
Ready for another game.
Yeah, Ashcon 2021 Day 2 action coming up here.
I hear one of these people is on Cole, and I'm very excited.
Yes. We do have a Cole and Astria matchup today, so this is going to be very interesting to see how it all plays out and the takes that each player has on these Phoenixborn. Won't say who's on what yet because I don't want anybody that's watching the game to get too excited. But yeah, I also was able to chat with both competitors yesterday. They both have agreed to share our their deck list with us for us to post to the VODs post event. So those will be available on the YouTube channel next week on our Ashcon coverage for YouTube. So you will be able to see the decks and the deck lists. I think we could probably deduce most of what we saw out of Major Apollo's deck yesterday because I think he was down to his last cards. And not quite as much information was known on the Inquisitor deck yet. But yeah, Little Steepot, if we have time to talk about that rule today, we will, but I don't want to put Nick on the spot in case he's not ready to answer that. So definitely don't want to just put you out there, Nick, and have it go to something not ready to answer yet. So
I think I saw what the interaction was. It's the spectral mount.
Yes.
Ice trap thing.
Yeah, I think you were notified through multiple channels yesterday, if I'm not mistaken.
I have some messages flagged to get back to when I come to a conclusion there, but yeah, that's a weird one for sure.
Yeah. So just a couple of housekeeping things while we have the time before we get into the end of the stream, and then if more things happen during the stream, we'll bring it up on the back end of the stream as well. We want to give a shout out to Brad 21126. That's a mouthful. You are a follower of ours from 5 hours ago. Appreciate that, Brad. And then Verker coming back in with a Prime resub. Thanks, Frank. Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, Frank. Awesome. Thanks, man. Hope everything's
was the audio sting overwhelming, Jeremy? Because it's just a default audio value for that, so I really can't control the volume output on them. But if we're too hot on general volume, I had to turn up general volume yesterday because it was a little bit 100% louder than us. Spam the wing to help the Red King. Spam the Red Wings to help the Red King. I love it, man. Leonard coming in with some emotes. Scout my decks for later. I'm specifically holding off on posting that game until after I'm completed with my Ashcon teapot. Sorry about that. But Christian coming in with that Prime sub as well. Appreciate it, Christian, man. You guys are awesome. It's super awesome. So I did complete my commentary on it last night. It is ready to go up. So as soon as I finish my games tonight, I will.
That was a cool game to watch.
Thanks. Yeah.
You guys should check it out when it comes on YouTube. It was a really close game.
It was a very close game, and it went down to me using every card in my deck to get there, which is traditional for playing Matt Bauer.
You had like 3 cards left in hand.
I had 1 card left in hand, and 2 cards on my spell board, and that's it.
1 is like 3. They're both odd numbers.
Yeah.
They're both less than 4.
Sure.
I can't wait to go back and watch that game. I saw a lot of discussion about it, but
yeah,
I gotta see it for myself.
Yeah. I mean, I was very happy to pull out the win last night. Obviously, that's never an easy thing against Matt for sure, and I think it's my first win against Matt. To be fair, I think I was all time.
You saved it up for like when it mattered.
Yeah, I guess so.
There you go.
Because I think in playing
all
Matt,
that karma credit.
That's right. I think in playing Matt, I was before that 0-5. So when I saw Matt on my pod, I made a comment in the Discord chat that Nick hated me.
Your pod is pretty high powered. Lil's Teapot, I don't know you. So I'm not going to comment on you, but Jesse, Scorpion, Matt, like I assume that has to be like very high level.
Teapot says he's the chaff. I think that's just playing it down. That's like a self suck here, just so you can I can get in there. So looks like we got a game up with Redking and Bunny though. So we're gonna switch over here. We can talk more about this if we have time post game here, folks. So
obviously, people are much more excited about this than whatever I had to say. Wait. Where's the game at?
It's got a password of sheep, apparently. See you, Bunny. Good luck.
I'm in.
What is this game? Can I not see it for some reason? What are we watching? Redking?
It's Phonograph.
Oh, right. His name isn't Redking. Yeah. What was the password? Think he's playing Ash Spirit?
Better not be. Cool. Thanks, Jesse. Well, I'm super excited to see Cole. That's just one of my favorite Reborn to see and play against. Every game is just really exciting. Cole's around.
A lot of weird stuff happens in the Cole games, like stuff that doesn't happen in any other game. I assume he's going to start in Abundance. He's got 5 illusion dice, which is like normally my Cole decks are like 1 illusion dice just so I can stick the Abundance, but 5 illusion is a lot of illusion.
This dice spread looks somewhat familiar. I wonder if it's related to the Shuffle Bus Season 2 winning Cole deck. I believe that was also a 5 illusion, and maybe even exactly the same dice spread.
That deck was cool. Watching Matt pilot, like, we have some coverage of that deck from Season 2. If you want to watch some crazy Ashes, like high-level Ashes play, go watch some VOD of that, because Matt piloted that deck like I don't even know. Just
I mean all the way to the top, right?
Yep.
So
and
illusion is one of those magic
Carl. Just absolutely great.
So good, and really utilizing illusion magic, which kind of gets a bad reputation lately. It lost a lot of its power going from 1.0 to Reborn, but
obviously it got the nerf hammer really hard because like the best action you could take in 1.0 was illusion dice side action. Like
very weird.
You don't need to play cards or anything. You just have to have a wolf rolled, and you just change the game. So here we see a meditate. He did hit 100 blades and a particle shield. Particle shield is a good one to know about.
Certainly.
and a Shadow Spirit, which this, to your point earlier, Matt's deck had 3 of Shadow Spirit, which we see 2 of already among the meditates and the spell board.
Indeed, and a great unit if Gates Thrown Open is in Dare's opening hand here. There's a lot of great ready spells to be used twice. Frostback Bear being another one. It has that
just abundance.
Abundance, free cards, free slashing. Yeah, absolutely.
The cards like Abundance that have the free activate are even better with Gates, But totally. Like you said, Frostback Bear.
There it is, the Frostback Bear. Konagrat sets down the Gilder, followed by a Salamander Monk here. We're just getting all our books online.
Yeah, no pressure yet. And you don't really expect a lot of pressure from a deck with 5 illusion dice in it to start. And I assume not a lot of pressure from an Astria deck. Astria decks, she's a weird one too. I think I've only ever commentated one other game of Astria, and I've never played her.
Yeah, she's a bit more of a uncommon Phoenix-born, I would say. And with Beguile, Astria's ability ready to go at any moment, it will be a bit more difficult for Cole to put down some offensive pressure, anything like a Frostback Bear or a possible Hammer Knight in the first 5, all susceptible to just being exhausted this round, so...
Right.
Definitely putting things on the back foot. Going a little bit smaller with the Shadow Spirit. I like that versus Astria.
Yeah, it's a little rough into the Gilder. But I mean, that's like essentially a trade that is going to happen anytime this turn, so maybe he's got plans.
Yeah, the immediate response of Gilder once Cole put down the Shadow Spirit book just kind of guarantees that it's going to get eaten there, and we see that happen here. Not much to be done about that, so you just play into it and keep going.
Yep, and in general, like, I think that the Cole deck, and this is just speculation, obviously we don't have deck list or anything. He has a Frostback Bear, so that's like a good Beguile target, but the way that this dice spread looks, I guess he could have a Hammer Knight. I'm just trying to think of something high value that he could, like, for the Beguile.
Yeah, and we see
that's like
not using the Beguile against the Frostback Bear, instead opting for Guilt Link. A nice utility ready spell to kind of counteract the pressure that Terrifying is putting against these small conjurations. Guilt Link will charge up and then able to sacrifice a small conjuration in exchange for hopefully a larger unit. So maybe looking to get Guilt Link done before Beguile, because with the opponent being able to choose the Guilt Link target, if you Beguile early, you kind of give them a better sacrifice target. I would consider.
Yeah, you like don't want to layer your removal spells in that fashion. In counting Beguile as a pseudo removal spell. There's the Abundance.
There's Abundance. We will see lots of slashing today.
And a Strengthen from the Astria player. So this is very reminiscent of a deck that I think... God, I can't remember who played it.
Just Cam does Astria Strengthen, right?
Yeah, Cam played it, and he was like... like, obviously Strengthen is good on Gilder or whatever, and any unit on his side or whatever, but the play that we saw in season 2 or 3, whenever the Cam was playing this Astria deck, was like strengthen your opponent's guy and then play the Astria loyalty card.
Yeah, you have Mark of the Goddess, which will force that extra strong unit to either deal damage to another unit they control, or in the right situations, it can go back to the Phoenix-born too. So really interesting removal / burn option. and works really nicely with the small conjurations that Astria has here.
Mark of the Goddess is a weird card. It's just a strange card.
Is.
It's cool though. Like, I mean, a lot of times it's kind of like a bad deal two, which is okay. Like a deal two is pretty good.
Yeah.
But if you engineer a situation like with the strengthen or just like with the beguile, you can do some crazy stuff with it. Like it has this weird reach and there's not a lot of cards in the game that operate similarly.
Absolutely. It's a really unique set of tools that we have here, and I think Guilt Link also helps play into this a lot too. It's a lot of different angles of removal that hopefully can be arranged into just the right either big removal or big burn situation.
This deck in particular, the Cold deck, if it is really similar to Matt's deck, I think it's pretty soft to Guilt Link. As long as the Astria player has a Frog or a Gilder to kill the Shadow Spirits. Because
indeed,
his other threats, like, you're happy to kill with Guilt Link. Even if it's just a Frostback Bear. Like, that's a lot of... like, you trade a little damage for killing their 2-dice unit is pretty good.
Yeah, totally. And Abundance gets clicked, so players are already on a different set of cards than their traditional first 5. A lot can happen with card draw in round 1. Call Upon the Realms being a probable pickup from Abundance there. And
right, yeah, that's not a first 5 card. But it
Right.
And it's a card that I rarely find myself playing. But for Cole specifically, it's interesting because it's like free main action. And obviously he likes those free main actions since he just has a million free side actions.
Absolutely. And side actions pair really well. For Cole, he has Slash into Fester. We see the ceremonial die is set up, so at any moment that could be immediate spot removal. We also see the dice for Gates thrown open for an extra bear, Shadow Spirit, and 2 more cards to slash with from Abundance. So definitely happy to see the Call Upon the Realms here, I would say. There's a lot of demand for better dice. So
and there's the Gates. This probably was a first 5 card.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Yeah, playing a Shadow Spirit into a Frog die, we'll see if Konagrat had budgeted 1 nature die for that or drew into a variation.
He played his own Gates.
We're going Gates, and it's a Gilder, even better than using the...
Right, yeah. If a Gates Shadow Spirit, I'll raise you a Gilder. It's
perfect. Yep, they're just going to go with that.
Because he's not going to have the PB guard for this next powered up monk on the bear.
Yeah, that strength and salamander attack on the Frostback Bear was great. It's not a trade you want to take as the Cole player, so definitely agree with the Phoenixborn guard there, and I'd say Astra's pretty happy about that as well. Players are bemoaning the double Gates.
Yeah. Well, it feels really good when you're the player that plays the Gates, but obviously, like, the Gates is better for the player with 4 spellboards. 4 books to them. Though he didn't untap the Guilt Link, I guess.
Yep. Yeah.
Raptor Herder very good against that Guilt Link.
Raptor Herder, yeah, that opens up some sacrifice targets, and foregoing the Frostback Bear, second Frostback Bear, so Gates thrown open, losing a little bit of value on Dare's side, but if that means playing against the larger removal of Astria is better, then that is a-okay.
So do you just attack with all 3 here? You should definitely attack with Bear.
Yeah, I think it might be time to go in there. We'll see. Astria running out of dice here. 1 left for the possible Beguile, so if you want to attack with this Frostback Bear, this might be the turn.
Yeah, he just has the Salamander attack next turn also.
Strength.
It's
Yeah,
just a question of whether you think you need. Okay, so he does choose to get the group tactics.
looks
One
good
option
to
was
me.
just to attack with bear, but attacking with all three I think is good.
Yep, so bear's gonna get through, and we'll see. A salamander can turn into a spirit here by blocking one of the smaller pieces, and we could even have a gilder survive if it blocks the raptor herder, or...
Yeah, I think he's going to chump with Gilders. Oh, I guess he is going to trade. I thought he was going to chump with Gilders just to free up battlefield space because he is full.
Yeah, that's a tough call there. It's a very advanced part of Ashes, I'd say. When do you want to get the most value out of what you have versus making room for the next thing? Fester coming down. Discarding Fester just to slash the Salamander Monk Spirit.
Yeah.
Very nice use of the side action there. It's clear Astria wasn't playing anything big enough to use Fester for, so lovely pivot there for.
And he really needed that too because
yeah,
if he doesn't, then that Salamander attacks Herder and then he activates Guilt Link and gets destroyed.
Absolutely.
So now he's going to Guilt Link. It's just going to get the Raptor Herder.
Yeah, still strong plays here.
But I guess he still has the Monk Strength and attack on Bear too, so gonna just put him down to nothing.
Yeah, great use of the Guilt Link there. We still have an abundance left on Cole's side to use. Gotta find a way to use those 2 dice. Oh,
that's interesting.
I wonder if there's a Fester that Astria might have drawn into, and instead Strengthening can just be used on a Gilder to go to Cole here.
Yeah, that's probably better than like waiting for a possible weird Beguile, because there's the abundance.
Konograd actually had to, because Cole was able to abundance slash on this next turn. So if the Salamander Monk Spirit doesn't go now, it's not getting damage in, and Guilt Link was required to summon it. So
right, but he had the option to not Guilt Link, just strengthen attack bear.
Was there
a counter?
Sacrificed an exhausted Salamander Monk to get the spirit, I thought.
Oh, maybe that's what happened. Maybe I was looking at a Gilder instead of the spirit prior to the Guilt Link. If so, then you played it way better than I did.
Yeah, very nice use there. The Gilder. Ooh, getting in for 2 damage on Cole, so yeah, that might
now I think it's very likely that he has the Fester, because that Gilder also could have killed the bear with the
with the guard down. There is the risk of Particle Shield on Dare's end. We've already seen one of them go away, so as long as Illusion is up, you can never be too sure about your damage here.
I love that card. I think Particle Shield is great. There's just like not enough, and he had it too. He just discarded it to slash.
Discarding it, wow. So, well played for Konograd here. Not playing into the possible dangers of reaction spells and getting maximum value.
This is like my favorite thing about playing Cole, is you just like abundance a million times. And you end up in this situation where and Konograd has actually managed to deploy like a ton of his cards.
Absolutely.
But he's you end up in this situation where you abundance and you deploy all your cards, even if they're just like slashes, and your opponent just draws less next turn. It makes the abundance so one-sided.
Yeah, totally.
A card that's like designed to be symmetrical, but just isn't even close when.
Yeah, Cole's able to take full advantage of that. The status token ended up on the Frostback Bear. I wonder if that was just a mistake of thinking Blood Chains was coming up next, but it was actually the Gilder ability. Not that it makes a ton of difference given the dice and cards available here, but there's certainly more and more ways to use.
The Astria decks can get really upset when it draws its explosive growth. Like, I think that's the only card I can think of in his colors that cares about status on his guys.
Yeah, I'm not seeing a lot. Time Magic would be more the one to consider
Right.
with stuff like Flash Strike, and upcoming we have Survival of the Fittest, so rogue status tokens can be used as protection for that pretty unusual removal spell, but that's not the meta we're in right now.
Right.
Dare thinking about this final turn. Gotta find a way to use those 2 dice if you can. Ceremonial Dice Power is available, picking up the Raptor Herder and a pass.
Yeah. Doesn't have a hollow or something.
Mm-hmm. So opting to spend the nature die on the Raptor Herder there, definitely making it difficult to spend all the dice as originally intended with Frostback Bear, but the wide swing with Raptor Herder definitely had its own value.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that was kind of a rough turn for the Cole player. Just this deck is designed in a way that you want to have like the late round kind of comeback, where, and that's what the Gates does, right? Is like it puts you in this position to, um, kind of trade your stuff off, get as much value as you can, and then reset. But the like counter Gates was just so good.
Totally. Yeah, Astria's been getting plenty of value from all this stuff. 9 damage already on Cole.
Right. This top around strength and attack.
Yeah, Strengthen's no joke with the Gates. Strengthen being all about as many times as you can click it to make it worth that high upfront cost, and Gates plays right into that alongside very economical summon books.
Here we have a Channer
down for
Revenge.
Cole. We do know there's an ally in hand for Dare, recurring that Raptor Herder at the end of the round. So, and there it is.
Yep, and this does look essentially like the same as Matt's list from season 2 now.
Yeah, looking like it.
Just all these super cheap, efficient books. I guess like Chant and Abundance aren't really a book, but these ready spells. It's too bad that like with all the cards he's drawn, you would hope to see second Shadow Spirit book.
Yeah, no one
we did see him.
already
We meditated
discarded.
one real early.
Yeah, makes card draw feel a little worse knowing that there's one less to find. And Astria gets the second strength and down.
Yeah, I mean, it's this Astria deck is operating. When you look at these 2 Phoenixborns, they look really different, right? That like the way that you would think they would play, but these 2 decks are actually like operating in a really similar place. It's kind of strange.
Yeah.
They just have these like super low to the ground cheap ready spells, and just trying to get incremental value. And right now the Astria is just outvaluing the Cole.
Yeah, lots of good plays and uses of the buffs to put Cole in a bad position here. Guilt Link definitely not looking like the card this round with a Frostback Bear with double exhaustion on Dare's side of the battlefield. That's an easy thing to sacrifice since it's not good now. It's not good next round, so going to be hard for Guilt Link to stay relevant in this round. But Astria kind of even taking on the role of the aggressor here. Maybe won't even
with
get attacked necessarily.
Cole's extremely small life pool, like, and already 9 damage on him.
Yeah, Astria, I think, is looking to keep clearing the battlefield a bit. We have another Strengthen online to pressure some more of that damage through, similar to how we saw in round 1. And we were talking at the top of the show the ways that Astria can use Mark of the Goddess to potentially get some extra burn damage in there. There is another Strengthen around, so it's possible for that to happen.
Yeah, we haven't seen any other sources of direct damage from the Astria list yet. And these color, I mean, he has 2 nature dice, so maybe he has a Molten Gold, or I guess he's in Sympathy Pain color.
Yeah, there's some options there. Final Cry, yeah, but it is a 5-color deck, so
right. Things like Molten Gold aren't reliable in your 5-color 2 nature dice deck.
Yeah, especially when you're counting on Gilder, and it looks like we are spending dice on Strengthen. You're spending ceremonial dice on these blood chains and other strengthens as well. So not a lot of wiggle room to get some variety burning there, but there's certainly options, and I wouldn't be surprised to see any of them come down at some point.
Here we have a Gilder. Gilder is so good.
Yeah,
that is a crazy card.
Unit. Picks off the Raptor. And Frostback Bear is in a position to attack back now.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know that we're in a place where the Cole like wants to be trading damage. I suppose he has like the herder to chump if his opponent comes back with a 2-power Gilder. But and he might not even do the strength play, but it's rough.
Yeah, I mean,
like you just like attack with bear and then he attacks back with strength and you have to chump block or go to 11. Like,
or even worse, as soon as you're down to a single unexhausted unit, you get the strengthen Mark of the Goddess combo, and then that's
right.
Whatever the unit's attack is +2 has burn damage to the Phoenixborn. So if this Frostback Bear goes in now, we definitely have that possibility of
it seems like he needs to summon Shadow Spirit prior to attacking with Bear, or he's just giving himself a hard time.
Yep, gotta stay wide. And we're on Dare's turn, still thinking about whether or not to go forward with that. There's always abundance, though.
The abundance. This seems like a matchup where 100 Blade should be just incredibly good. I mean, it's not super good like in this exact situation, be okay, but just in general, this matchup, it seems like that should be very, very good.
Yeah. Definitely strong against these smaller things, and hard to complain about a damage to the Phoenixborn and another card in hand for Cole. So 100 Blades,
right? It just like
in any case.
Any deck that has Salamander Monk, I think 100 Blades is obviously great against, because even if it's your last card, you still draw a card, so you can side action slash prior or after to get both halves of the Monk.
Yeah, one of the few ways to, I guess, do double ping in a single turn. Cole's got that down really well and has plenty of applications. Dare does have the ceremonial die up, threatening a slash faster, so I'm not sure what kind of big units Astria might have access to here. There's an Essence Druid in the discard pile, but anything big is susceptible to very, very efficient removal. Plenty of decks are happy to spend a frog die and play Fester, so a 2-dice hard removal. Cole gets that for even cheaper at 1 slash and 1 die.
Yeah, it's two cards in 1 dice instead of 1 card and 2 dice.
Yeah, typically dice are more valuable, but the longer the game goes,
especially in a game in a deck where you have abundance, like
you're playing.
Your cards are meaningless almost.
Yeah, and with the threat of possible burn combos coming from Astria, I think this Cole definitely has to put all the cards in to slash as possible to stay ahead and try and turn this life disadvantage around before reaching the bottom of the deck.
So
there's a Shared Sorrow.
Discarding Chant of Sacrifice. There's a card I haven't seen in the deck in a long time.
Yeah, very, very interesting addition there. But as a 4-battlefield Phoenixborn, you do need to find ways to sacrifice your own stuff. That is a nice option in Gates. I could see that being a nice spellboard pivot over the Guilt Link here for Astria against a more controlling, like a control v control kind of deal here. You can't count on your opponent to attack, so you can't really use Guilt Link to sacrifice your own stuff.
If this is a deck that actually has 3 gates, a lot of decks just have the 1 gates for first 5 stuff. But if this is a deck that actually plays 3 gates, I can see it being better. But in general, I feel like I would always rather have like a I can't think of the card. It's ceremonial dice that activate does 1 to your thing, 1 to their thing, or if it's focused, it taps them both.
Small sacrifice.
Small sacrifice, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that you like get a little value out of your guy dying, rather than straight up like
just destroy it.
That's all it does.
Yeah, Chant of Sacrifice is waiting for the day for a whole Chant self-sacrifice synergy to come to fruition.
It's a cool card, and like I actually put it in a list like a week ago, but not in a way that like would play the game fair, right? Like, it's not like it's just a weird card. But hopefully when in whatever crazy future time we have time ceremonial deck, maybe there'll be something cool for it.
Oh, we got that combination in playtesting right now, so we'll see where it ends up.
You heard it here first, chat. Nick says Chant of Sacrifice in the next deck.
Big blood chains for Astria here.
Yep.
Gosh, Gilder is such a strong card with this.
It's so good.
Cheap unit, 2 life, so it has access to that double exhaustion from blood chains. We've seen 1 damage lingering around on these Gilders all game, so converting that into
and specifically against the Cole, like these Gilders end up with like a damage on them so often that you get the full value. Like that Gilder that died to that blood chains and the previous one, like, you know, you spent a dice and a half on them roughly. Like he's made 2 so far, or I guess 3 for the cost of 3 nature class and 1 charm class. And he's just each one like killed a shadow spirit, and 2 of them killed a frostback bear and ate up a slash. Like just
Shadow Guard coming down. Great time to block that Gilder and save some precious life on Cole.
Is there a world where you consider not blocking?
There is. I don't know if this is the world being so low on.
I agree with the block. I think this is right because I don't think you can go to 4 because then you're in range of like any of your units getting strengthened marked.
Yeah, it's just too close to the lethal combos, and I think attacking with the Shadow Spirit the turn before by Dare was a good part there. Definitely being aware of the possibility of strengthen and whacking Cole for 4. You just can't be down to that 1 unexhausted unit.
Yeah.
Blocking with the Shadow Guard here also charges up the Chant of Revenge, which is nice. Just making sure you're getting value out of your investments there.
Yeah, the Cole is starting to generate a large amount of value of his own. But being so far behind in life, it's going to be rough because he can't play very aggressively, and he can't summon a Frostback Bear next turn.
Yep, all out of bears.
Does something crazy. I mean, you could like slash out your own bear this turn. Discard 2 cards to kill the one that's hurt, so you have it to summon next turn. But I don't think that's a life you want to live.
Yeah, it's certainly not the place you hope to be in. You want slashes to be going towards the opponent, and we have little salamander monks coming out here as possible targets. So yeah, Astria's battlefield is starting to decrease. We're pretty close on dice here. The exhaustion will be hurting Cole next round.
So he discards a chant to slash, kills the first half of the monk.
And we'll see what comes down for a main action.
Wait, what happened? He discarded Chant of Revenge.
That was just slash and summon the monk spirit.
Yeah. Right. The way that Ashteki reads it, it says Konagrat uses Salamander Monk, and I was like, this doesn't seem like the right thing. Here's that 100 Blades. 100 Blades a 3-for-1 here. But with Konagrat having 3 dice left, that's not gonna like. It's very possible that Cole takes another. Oh no!
It's thrown open. That's 2 more books and another strengthen. Oh, Yeah, we were talking about how Gates Thrown Open is sometimes just that one of in the first 5, but hey, if it worked the first time, it's probably going to work the next time you see it too. And big deal here. Salamander.
He's not dead, but he's pretty dead. Like
I think we have a 3 guaranteed damage coming through here, even if Cole opts to slash the Salamander Monk. There's no way to block and remove the back end of the Salamander either, so banking another 3 damage here for Astria.
Yeah, Cole does get to go first next round, so he'll be able to like maybe clean up these leftover guys, but yeah, we're going to see the strengthen attack for 3. I assume we're going to see, before the end of this round, a Gilder killing that Shadow Spirit. Maybe he'll Gilder his own guy and like attack for 1.
Just to get more in. And it's really relevant having these double exhaustion tokens on the bears from the super good blood usage, because that's going to open up the possibility of Mark of the Goddess. It's going to be kind of you're in trouble either way as you build up this board. You need defenders to stop strength in, and if you just have the one defender, it could be Mark of the Goddess back to your face. We're approaching a really nasty point of
I do think that it is better to kill the Shadow Spirit than your own monk, especially against Cole. And we see him slash the Gilder again, which I guess is like you can't slash the monk because you'll just take more damage.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's looking good. We're going into round 3. If you don't get a defender, that's lethal, and if Konagrat has a Mark of the Goddess, that could also be lethal. Possible vanish.
That was the main action, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he's not literally dead if he can make a blocker. Because
that's where Mark of the Goddess could come in as a possible lethal.
But you can't play around that, right? He doesn't have the option to not play a guy.
Yep.
So if he has the mark, he has the mark. Ideally, you would, if you have I guess Raptor Herder's like the best guy. No, Raptor Herder still has 1 power, so it's still 3U, right? I don't know if he has a 0 power unit.
Mm-hmm. There's Raptor Herder, yeah. So,
but this does stop the mark, because he'll have 2 guys in play.
Lethal slash into maybe pick up the Gilder.
Now is the time I think you slash the monk. Maybe not. He did. Yeah, he hits the monk.
Slash the monk.
Yeah, you couldn't slash the monk last turn because it does a damage to you, but you slash the monk now. The difference between the monk spirit and the base monk is almost 0 in the current board state because I don't think the Cole player is really attacking anytime soon.
He's got plenty of life to deal with any possible swing pressure. Going in with the monk spirit, trying to chip away at things. There's also still a Gilder in back to pick up these 1-lifers, maybe waiting for the Shadow Spirit there, but it's just going to add up over time.
Right, and I think this is a really good attack because he's essentially giving up nothing, but you can't PB guard it. Like, I mean, you could, I suppose, but you're gonna spend a point of life to save your guy you made essentially just to be a blocker anyway.
Yeah, Astria's just draining Cole of all the possible units to just get down to that.
We're not going to see the focus strengthen. He meditated it.
Oh no! Really inspiring Astria deck, though. I love this. It's nice to see all the micro synergies of this 5-color combo, like the way Gilder works with the blood chains and the Gates Thrown Open works with Strengthen and Gilder and Salamanders. Like everything here is in for a reason.
I would be really interested to see what this deck did when it wasn't drawing 7 cards a turn.
Oh, there is that side of it
This
too.
is like a deck. This is like a deck that you would play in abundance in if you could, right? Like there's like a deck that would like an abundance because all this stuff is so cheap and efficient it can deploy it all. So his opponent drew him 4 extra cards in turn 1, and maybe just 2 extra because he was left with 2, but he just had 7 cards every turn, and he gets to play them all, just like the cold deck gets to play them all, but he's not the one
abundance. It's easy to forget the value that just having 2 more cards worth of options does give your opponents. Everyone's had that hand where they draw just too many of one type of color and just can't. Here's the strengthen.
Yeah, this is gonna kill him.
Under the last unit.
I assume he wouldn't do that if he didn't have the mark. So there it is.
Mark of the Goddess punching through, mind controlling the Raptor Herder to do her bidding, punching Cole for the lethal damage. Super well played to both players. Very exciting matchup.
F.
Oh man.
Got him. No, that was cool. That was not at all what I expected to see today when I heard we were having Cole Astria matchup.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there were no Beguiles played.
You're right. The blood chain did all the heavy.
This deck was blank Phoenixborn with 1 copy of Mark of the Goddess, right? I assume he has 3, but
that final one. Yeah, a lot of Phoenixborn are really lean on using their exclusives and abilities throughout the game, but yeah, I think that just the super well planned first 5 is what paid off tremendously here, and so much value from that first gates, and the second gates was just
both gates were brutal. That's crazy.
I love that.
It's a cool card.
Single illusion. If you just don't plan on using illusion for anything else, and when you draw that gates, you know when you can plan around that, and it's almost always going to be good. How are you going to say no to more Gilders, more Strengthens, more Salamanders?
Right. When you have a pile like this where all your books are free to activate or very cheap, Gates just draws you 3 or 4 cards. And and not that either player needed to draw 3 cards in this matchup because of the abundance play, but Gates is interesting because even if you think about it as a draw 3 or whatever, you know that the 3 you're drawing are cards that are part of your plan. They're going to be good cards because they're the same cards you first 5 to put in your spell row.
Yeah, totally.
So it's a little better than just a straight up draw 3.
What an interesting game, fellas! Just a lot of intricacy in that Astria list for sure.
Was this Konigrat's his list, or is this actually the list that Cam played?
I don't know. I'd have to go back and
I would guess that this is a Redking special. One of the most prolific and creative deck builders I've ever seen.
I don't want to take anything away from him because I've played against him on several occasions, and his stuff is always really, really kind of wacky. This must have 15, 17 cards exactly the same as Cam's deck.
They're pretty close. I don't think Cam played a lot of the Shared Sorrow, Seeds of Aggression suite. Obviously, we saw Cam's list have.
There are Seeds of Aggression in this deck?
Yes. Discard
also cool with the strength.
That's how he got the blood chains back. You guys were talking and missed a kind of a critical moment where he seeds you were talking about the Chant of Sacrifice, and that Chant of Sacrifice actually recurred to blood chains for Redking to use as that second.
Right, the Shared Sorrow, yeah.
But he does have 2 Seeds of Aggressions in this list as well.
Seeds of Aggression seems a little out there to me.
It's more self-removal if you need more of that.
That's true. That's a good point, that it can clear up your battlefield. It just having every card in your deck rely on Strengthen, I don't think is good.
Well, I think what's interesting about Seeds is you don't even have to it's just spend 1 die on your Gilder. Let the Gilder die, right? It's it does nothing
Which
else.
is a card that I personally would never play. Is just like 1 dice kill my own guy, like we were talking about with Chant.
Right.
Well,
But
I think there's more to the seeds in this list, with Strengthen being on the spell board, and we didn't see one in play, but Essence Druid, you can bump up Essence Druid to 4 and kill a knight with Seeds of Aggression when you have Strengthen in play.
for sure.
I agree. I wouldn't play it as just a kill my own guy spell.
Yeah,
but
no, but
the strength that gives it a little bit of action. It just he has so many things that rely on strengthen to work essentially. Like I think he floods his strengthens. Though I mean, obviously he pulled it out in this match. I think the deck is really cool.
So many interweaving parts. Just
right, just like 15 of the cards in this deck are either much better or turned off without strengthen in play, and you only get to activate the strengthen like 1.5 times per.
Yeah, maybe you get more strengthens, maybe you get more gates. Certainly enough times I think you'll see it, but it is nice when you can kind of have that focal point. Everything really is built around that strengthen here.
Yeah.
There really is
even the Gilder and the Salamander Monk, like obviously both those cards are playable on their own, but much better with the strengthen.
Yeah, there's really, I mean, like, there's a lot of synergy with Seeds also being able to, if Seeds is bad in a given matchup, being able to then use it with your Shared Sorrows to get back Bloodchains, which is probably better in that scenario, right? So, like, you still get, like, deal 1 damage for 1 die, and...
That actually is an excellent point.
Not a lot of damage for Shared Sorrow. Normally you see Shared Sorrow trying to go for 3s or 2s to like recur cards like Sword of Virtue or Chaos Gravity or like really strong things. Earthquake, those 2-cost exclusive cards, or 3-cost Knights for big damage, but really a lot of just Shared Sorrow for 1 in this deck.
And I bet it's because of gates. I bet he just wants a million things to sorrow for gates.
Yeah.
The power is in its flexibility. You could discard a Shared Sorrow to get back another Strengthen if you think another Strengthen's there. So
he comments in chat, "Yep, gates." Yeah, Shared Sorrow is a card that I do like a lot. And in general, like exactly what you said, or in this case for 1, a lot of times you do it for 2 because there's so many powerful cards at 2. But you just want to have like one core thing that you're usually gonna sorrow for. And then you just want to have like an awesome toolbox of other stuff at that same cost. So you always have Frauder to get your normal plan, but you also have like cool stuff for situational times in the game.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I would have really processed all of the nuance and interweaving synergies that this deck has without seeing it in action. Just looking at the deck list alone, I don't think it really illuminates all of the insights and technique that there is to all these interweaving parts. And this game was just a great example. And going up against a strong player, playing a strong deck, we saw it perform well.
Yeah, that was a cool match. That was definitely a cool match.
Mm-hmm.
The gates were insane. Like Cole plays gates round 1 and it's insane. It's so good. And then Astria plays gates like the following turn and it's even better. And you're just
yeah.
I guess that happened.
That did happen that way. And I mean, bottom line is you just have to go, okay, like you got to give a little, tip of the cap. I'm going to give my best British impression here. Tip of the cap to Redking and these guys. So
I thought you were going to do like an accent or something.
No, God, no. Okay. I know better than to try to do that. That's just insulting. But I want to just say to those guys, like, hey, I mean, like both of these decks are very. First off, Matt's deck is very difficult to pilot. I want to be the first one to put that out there. From season 2, we talked about that a ton when Matt was playing it. That it was one of those kinds of decks where only Matt really, and I mean, again, I don't want to take anything away from,
I think.
But Matt's deck is.
I think he played it really well, actually.
Matt's deck is very difficult, and it's one of those decks that can be really hard for a player that doesn't play a lot to be able to get value out of it. So
yeah, I mean, commentating that match, I didn't see anything any lines that I disagreed with, or even any like deviating lines. So I mean, I think he played it really, really well. And to your point, it's a very complicated deck to play. He got a little unlucky because you really want to have that second spirit book, like in round 1 off the double abundance, or just like the top of round 2.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah,
he obviously
really
built one really early and then didn't get the second one until the last turn of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think like it's just it's the abundance is a big part of that deck's overall win strategy, but it's not the end all be all of that particular deck. I think it's what's interesting is the sort of incremental advantage that Cole can get and be aggressive. And we saw Matt in season 2 play that deck, obviously to its pinnacle of its capabilities, right? And in that particular scenario, Matt used a lot. I mean, he relied a lot on things like Hammer Knight, which we didn't see in this game at all, right? Like we didn't see any of the bigger threats that can exist in that list. So that really opened up the door to the Bears getting double exhausted from the Bloodchains. I do think there was some opportunities for Bunny here to avoid getting really sucked into the Bloodchains play. The first one's obviously a huge surprise, can't do anything about it. But the second one, especially when it was telegraphed by the Shared Sorrow into pulling it back, you really had an opportunity to use your slash to turn off the power of that Bloodchains there.
Yeah, those wounded guilders are very sinister.
Yeah. You really just can't leave them up, right? Like you can't leave them up and give good value and board states for Konagrat here, i.e. Redking, to be able to do that. So, I think if you play that match 2 or 3 times, and obviously this is such a wild list, right? It's not what you would probably spend most of your days testing. We like to sometimes call these gatekeeper decks when we're talking about competitive play, because they're not necessarily decks that you're going to specifically test against. Like, I mean, I would be shocked if anybody said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to play test against an Astria that's got a bunch of strengthens." And
my triple Gates Astria deck matchup is short.
Right. I just don't think that's going to happen. So when you start talking about these things in more detail, you have to go, okay, this is the kind of thing you have to know how your deck functions against these kinds of decks. Generally speaking, when you look at what Redking did throughout the course of that entire game, these units and these things that he played seem really soft to Cole on paper, right? Like on paper, none of this seems like it would be that hard for Cole to sort of work its way around. But we saw, obviously to Ben's credit here, played extremely well. And even when it looked like the Cole deck was about to turn the corner, here comes a Gates to reset the board and put the, Astria firmly back in the driver's seat. So that's huge credit to Ben on understanding how to play the Cole matchup.
In a vacuum, I kind of agree about like Cole being good against this, but specifically, I think Cole would actually have been better against like a Knights deck or something than this deck. Because the issue that happened in this game was that even though you can slash a Salamander Monk or whatever, his Guilders and his Salamander Monks were just valuing him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like where it takes like
Knights, but weren't being removed like Knights with the Fester.
Right.
There had
exactly
a couple rounds there, just not able to fully utilize all the dice because things like the slash Fester plan had to be sent back, pivoting away from another bear and stuff for the Raptor Herder left a die stranded, and sometimes that's what you have to do, but I love the way the Astria deck used these small units in combination with Strengthen to punch above their weight class and not be removed by the things that typically would hurt them.
Absolutely. And when you think about the activation of Strengthen and the book tax on Strengthen at 2 dice into something like Salamander Monk, which we've seen played competitively and a multitude of times now across our seasons, one of the things you have to realize is that monk is sort of the first investment of that monk is a 3 dice investment to make that 3 attack, which means it's punching with the same weight as a knight, right? Because most knights are 3/4s. So you're kind of equal in dice investment essentially that Salamander Monk is a knight, but then it has this back half that still gives you a 1/1 if it does die. And then you get into a position where the second activation of it is just Value Town, right? Because now you're spending 1 dice to get a knight. And we have seen versions of decks like Blink decks, and we saw a version of this with the Gift of Wings deck yesterday where we were trying to get extra value from knights by not having to spend the full 3 dice off of those knights. That's kind of what this is doing with on a bottom of the of the dice spend moving forward. So I think that's really cool, and I think that that's a real testament to how you can reevaluate some of these 1/1s and 2/1s and things like that exist in the game, or even as we move forward and we start talking about some of the new cards that are coming out in the Lulu and Auric lines. Now all of a sudden you make these O2s into 2/2s, and in some cases, you might even get 3/2s out of them, or you might get
the caveat to that. I think is that this deck specifically, like a card like Strengthen in general, that has a heavy book tax.
Mm-hmm.
Like 1 activation of Strengthen is not good enough to pay for like class, right? Like you wouldn't pay class to give your guy +2 attack 1 time. So the value of this card comes from the number of times you activate it.
Sure.
And when we looked at this game, it ended turn 2 of round 3.
Right.
So that's not many activations of Strengthen, right? But because of the way this deck in particular is built, his first Strengthen he activated 5 times.
Right.
His second Strengthen he activated twice.
Right.
Which I think is like pretty average for second Strengthen because you're like a turn around later in playing it. But the 5 times on the first one, like, oh boy. Yeah. The issue is there that like he committed, 30 to 50% of his deck build to do that.
Sure.
Right? Like he's playing 3 gates. He's playing all these things that make it very profitable for him to use Strengthen. You can't just like slam a Strengthen in your deck and pretend that you're going to get great value out of it.
No, I completely agree. But I think looking at things like Salamander Monk, or even a unit that we haven't seen a lot of recently that could be value for it, is the Mist Spirit, right? Like when we start talking about value, where you can make 2 units for the cost of 2 dice immediately, it sort of forces these pressure points.
As long as Salamander's in the format, Mist Spirit is not going to get played.
Sure. I'm just giving examples of other styles of units that can do a very similar thing to the Salamander Monk as well, if you're on different colors. And but to be fair, like I don't think there's a world where you would want to play Mist Spirits over Salamander Monks just based on their efficiency. But you can also do this with Raptor Herders. You can. Ben says no diss in the Misties. So now we know what Ben's playing in next Ashcon.
Okay.
Mist Spirits.
I will continue to diss the Misties.
All right, but I was leading into a segue until Neil decided to take over and talk about like crazy competitive things like efficiency of Strengthen. But that was we said that we had a special surprise in line for Ashcon, and one of those things was for us to sit down with Nick and get an inside peek at the new expansions, the Messenger of Peace and Goron Rock Brawler, that are coming out here hopefully in November. Goron Rock Survivors. I'm sorry. Yeah, there's a Goron Rock Brawler in that list, but
one of my favorite cards that will not get played.
Yeah. So I wanted to take a moment, Nick, and so we're going to guide along this conversation. I've got Ash's Live up here so that we can look at cards for our chat that maybe is new to these cards, but I think we just want to take the next 45 minutes or so and just kind of talk to you about the experience of developing these, because these are your kind of, like, I know you had an influence in Jericho, obviously, as well, but this was your first chance to sort of build 2 sort of pre-cons that were designed to fight each other, right? Like Jericho was a standalone deluxe expansion. We're now in, Lulu and Auric coming out, and these 2 lists were pre-con lists that are kind of come out at the same time, so naturally we're going to see players gravitate to just playing their pre-cons against each other, at least from a starting point. So talk to me a little bit about that experience. Like when you do the testing process, how much do you spend time on the pre-con lists, or do you at all? Or do you just say, we're looking at specifically the competitive lists and how to balance cards in a competitive environment? Tell me a little bit, give us some insight in that process.
Yeah, totally. So I approach designing these full decks, because every Ashes deck is a full deck, with a lot of just cohesion in the ideas presented in the deck, and really leaning on that to make sure we're wearing on the promise of what that deck shows itself to be, and just what those two magic types mean to be together. So Lulu is a pretty straightforward deck. We know natural magic has status tokens involved with it, and time magic showing with the dice power and some of the stuff in Jericho, that status tokens were big there. So it was really important for me for Lulu's deck to be status token oriented and also be reminiscent of who Lulu originally was in 1.0. She had Phoenix Barrage in a slightly different version. It dealt 4 damage to a unit and then 2 to the Phoenixborn. The new Phoenix Barrage is more or less the same thing, but you can split up the damage, so it has a little bit more bang for its buck than it did in the older version of the game. And the other thing that I really wanted to look at with making new cards for natural magic was it's already a very strong magic type, and it has a lot of strong cards that you see almost every single time you're playing that color. Frostback Bear comes to mind as one where if you're playing nature, you're probably playing Frostback Bear. So I didn't want to necessarily make more cards in natural have that same kind of auto-include quality to them. So I really leaned into the thematic things of Lulu and the combination with time magic to make them still strong cards, so they're worth playing, but be different deck builds. So the Ember Root Lizard is the conjuration for natural in Lulu's deck, and it requires a status token. So that automatically asks the player a lot of other questions about how am I going to get status tokens here? There's some ways to do it in natural, there's some ways to do it in time and sympathy and kind of all over the place. So it informs players that there's other ways to play this magic type, and you kind of have to explore these other things. There's the alteration spell hunting weapons that can only go on allies. So now you're thinking about allies with natural magic, not necessarily just like their staple conjuration unit of Frostback Bear. So that's a lot about Lulu's deck there. Talking about pre-con testing in general, it's something I put a focus on earlier in the process to just gather the general idea of how the deck functions. It's where we're making the early calls of what's going to be the spell board count for this Phoenixborn. How many of these need to be books? Because every pre-con needs a certain amount of each card type to be a functional thing. I really couldn't make a deck without introducing at least 1 or 2 new summon spells. Typically I need some allies. So finding just the early general ideas of what all of those roles of a deck are going to be filled by is kind of my primary focus. And then a lot of the playtesting process does have to be focused on competitive, just due to the nature of the wide card pool and how thin of a line it is to balance things exactly right for that play. So that does mean that the experience of playing pre-cons isn't necessarily always going to mean every matchup is going to be an equal matchup for every Phoenixborn. But I do want to stress that I make sure that the precons are a good playable experience that delivers on the promise of who that Phoenixborn is. And hopefully those feelings of if you play a precon game and it's like, this deck just wasn't quite strong enough, because if there's any kind of tech card or edge case card, it's a 3 of in your precon, and you might not really want that. So I hope that kind of that desire to improve the deck can encourage players who are used to the precon format to get into the constructed format bit by bit. And we've had a lot of players write wonderful articles for us on the website, kind of taking a precon and making smaller changes to it with a limited card pool, kind of introducing that concept of deck building.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really cool, that particular, like the reconstructed series, or the my brain is skipping on the other series. The Building Basics, I think, is what it is, right? I think those are both really great segues into getting into the meat of Ashes, which is the freedom of the deck building that exists. I mean, we just saw a perfect example of that in 2 decks we just watched today, right? Like, there's so much freedom in those deck builds that were non-traditional and almost every stretch of the imagination, and they are very functional and very competitive and very powerful. So it's neat to see that play out. So when I know you have been on the record and talked to folks, and think even to us in times, about how difficult Auric has been to balance. So I'm not going to put you on the spot, and Auric is too new here, but let's talk a little bit about like when you were designing Auric in particular then, because we know Nature was not in need of a bunch of new powerful tools. It could use potentially some support tools to round out the builds a little bit more, give you some more flavor on how you want to maybe accomplish some of the similar things that could have existed. Fighting Spirit's a very similar kind of card to Strengthen. It just takes a little bit more work to use it, those kinds of things. But when we talk about Auric, there's a whole host of new designs here. I mean, we've got our first, modal card. We've got, Generosity is the card I'm referring to there. But we've got, Concentration and Awakened State and an attachment to a Phoenixborn. That's brand new design. I mean, there is so much interesting design going on in Auric that I can only imagine, as somebody that has designed my own game in the past, how much work went into making Auric right. I can only imagine. So talk to me a little bit about that process. What were sort of like the design goals? Because I think when you do that, you kind of have to have like a heading of where you want it to be, and then you just aim to try to point the flow of the testing in that direction, right? As you get closer and closer to the finish line. So talk to me a little bit about that.
While Lulu was very much a more mechanics and like color pie, if you will, focused design, just given the state of natural magic and a little bit more of the straightforward nature of an aggressive type, it was a lot more grounded in the mechanics and stuff. But for Auric, the design was really a lot more character driven. We have Auric as this character that has some qualities of Buddhism attached to him, and pacifism and peace, as well as the previous thematic idea of him being very well versed in multicolor magic. Auric's 1.0 ability allowed you to spend 2 basic to reroll 4 different colored dice.
Yeah, it was totally fair and fun.
right. That
it was bonkers.
It's funny, because back in 1.0, the thought of running a 4-color deck was pretty out there, and that's where the idea of Auric came from, where it's like, can we make a Phoenixborn that has an ability strong enough to facilitate that width of dice types? And given that dice recursion and the illusion dice power are out of the game now, we see 4-color builds all the time. They definitely still have their weaknesses versus like a 3 or a 2-color build, but they're viable. That's not something that is completely out there. So I had these ideas for Auric being this contemplative character that also had a degree of like mastery over dice types. And given that he's a character who we've seen in art meditating, I really, really wanted him to have an ability that triggered off of taking the meditate action. It just seemed like something that he had to have as a character who meditates. So that's kind of where the insight ability came from in Auric. It was actually a card first. It was a ready spell you would put down, so you could have like multiple copies of that insight effect, and you could tuck a lot of cards underneath it and have access to those. And it was a really fun idea, but it was feeling kind of too out there. You were like storing too many cards and having too many options, it's too much to think about. So
that ability is rough when it's not a +1. If you have to like start the ready spell in your hand and then do it, like you're like cycling, you're not actually drawing one. That sounds a lot worse than, I mean, maybe it was good in the long game, but the text on Auric I think is just awesome.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Yeah, exactly what you're saying. Just finding the right place for a certain effect can have a big difference, because as a Phoenixborn ability, free Phoenixborn abilities are really good, no matter what they're doing. If you're James or Odette or Herald. They all have free abilities, and they're all very good. So here's another take on that, a little bit more resource and option oriented. But yeah, it keys right into that thematic ability of Auric being a meditating character. Now finds insight in meditating and gains a new card to hand. And that leads really well into his unique spell, Concentration. So I had this dream for all of this meditating and time spent outside of battle to kind of culminate into a powerful endgame condition. And I was also, given that this is a time magic expansion and kind of trying to find out what to do with status tokens in unique ways, I kind of came to the conclusion that I wanted status tokens to build up onto Auric to unleash a powerful kind of game ending state or effect. And Concentration was a tough one to get right, and it's still a tough one to play properly. You're looking at a 7 dice investment to get to the Awakened state in order for it to start dealing any form of damage. But that's not to say it doesn't give you advantages along the way. Concentration can let you transmute dice types, which is a callback to his original ability. It also draws you cards, and he's already getting extra cards from his ability. And you need to find as many copies of that concentration spell as you can so you can start paying to get to the Awakened state. Concentration went through a lot of different variations, and Auric was really bad for a long time. We were in a metagame perspective, Knights were really starting to show their power in competitive play, way more than I think we were in tune to when just testing the upgrade kit. Just the sheer strength of Knights were starting to show themselves, and it's kind of where the round 2 blowout really was starting to exist, like seeing kind of the way Matt Bauer's style decks could just win the game at the top of round 2 if completely uncontested. People really had to learn how to start respecting Knights. And alongside that, I also wanted to add some cards into the Lulu Auric expansion to give players alternative ways to do that. And even before that, Jericho had Outmatch, which was another kind of attempt at adding some big unit counters into the game. And we took that even further with Backtrack, which it's in Lulu, but I actually ended up using it in Auric more than anything. Auric is a really character-driven design, and I feel like we landed on some really fun thematic ways to play a new character. One thing, as I've been making more and more Phoenixborn and adding them to the pool, is I want them each to feel like they have a unique quality to them and will play out very differently, even if that means kind of making their builds or strategies a little bit more, or I guess less open than any other design. Like a Phoenixborn like Odette could play basically anything. You have a unique card that destroys things and an ability that deals damage. That's always going to be good. You can run all sorts of builds in there. It's a very, very open design with that. So things like Auric, you kind of have this completely different approach where you're like, okay, how am I going to build a deck that makes Awakened State work? And I think that's really part of the fun of playing Auric, because there's discussion about whether or not Awakened State is even good enough to bother with.
Sure.
And so it's more of a deck building puzzle to solve rather than just adding another character that can play a lot of the similar builds there.
Yeah.
So the players that dedicate the time to figuring out how to make that Awakened State work, and can you survive and get there? Can you convert that into a win? It's a really rewarding project, I think.
Yeah, and honestly, like, I mean, in my limited place testing with Auric up to this point, because with Ashcon coming up in the middle of a Shuffle Bus season, there was much more stuff, pressing matters to work on than whether or not I could make Awakened State consistent. But in my limited experience with it, when you do achieve Awakened State, it's pretty darn good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, Awaken State is a very powerful ability. I think it's very thematic. It feels really neat to have this kind of monk warrior that gets essentially Ash's version of One Punch is how I
He's just like
to call it.
He's like Aang from Airbender, right? Like
right.
That's
Oh, absolutely.
I drew a lot of inspiration from Avatar. That's probably my favorite show of all time.
Okay.
And
that's cool. That's awesome to know that. So, yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, I certainly understand your perspective on Knights sort of running away with the meta, and I wonder.
But then you went and chained River Skull.
Yeah. That was where you took my the
wind from my sails, Neil. I disapprove.
so if that I mean, River Skull's a very powerful card, and obviously it warps deck building decisions also, right? Like we're talking about the one of Flash Archers, right? And then people just doing strange things like ceremonial recurring the Flash Archer or Xandering the Flash Archer to be able to just do this thing on repeat essentially with your Scalds over and over. And then you can get even more abusive with blinks and things like that if you really wanted to. Like you can set up this sort of world where you're never going to stick a knight, and so I understand why Scald is chained the way that it is, and
I don't.
I know you don't, Neil, but I get it. I do understand, and I empathize. The interesting thing about backtrack, and I just want to make a comment on that since you brought it up, was what a card, like what a perfect way to design some Knight hate and not have it just be an auto include in every deck, right? Like it's another one of those cards where if you're going to try to first 5 backtrack, you're going to have to build around it in some capacity, right?
Absolutely.
You're going to have to say, okay, I'm abundancing, I'm generositying, I'm concentrating. I mean, those kinds of cards give you the card advantage you need in order to be able to play that backtrack in the first 5.
The discard costs are really unusual like that, and similar to the way the Knight meta kind of developed, we really began understanding the importance of making an optimal first 5 that's using all 10 of your dice, how much of that has to commit to the battlefield to start the game off, how those utility spells are a calculated risk you have to account for. You can't just first 5 any cards that you like and expect to succeed. And I think 1.0 had a little bit more of that vibe, so it was kind of shocking as that kind of came up in Reborn. It's just like, whoa, this is a really aggressive game if you want it to be, and learning how to respect that is a big part of the strategy now. And
I can see how that would for sure be like a big shock, where at least in my limited experience of 1.0 and what I've heard about it or read about it or whatever, like the game was a resource denial game, or like a resource. It was all the dice resource, right? You were either like denying your opponent's resources or, renewing your own. Obviously, all that's illusion magic, and sometimes you're doing both. And that was where the battle was fought, right? In that area of the game. So when you removed all that, then it's logical that we would move to this, like, I guess, tempo and life resource oriented victory, because this is a common theme in games where, and it's really divisive, right? Like in game design, you have these like resource denial strategies, and some people like they just love them because people love to like just make their opponent miserable. Everyone else hates them, and I mean, I assume as a competitive player, you just like, these are the cards we can play, so we play them. But in general, that the whole identity of the game changed, right? Like I maybe you can talk a little more about that, but for me, like, it's totally different.
Relevant. There was a lot of changes to battle too that also put the that has board advantage in the driver's seat, and kind of like in a control seat too, where it's like if you're the player calling the shots on the battlefield, pressuring your opponent to make tough decisions, and eventually running out of those decisions, you get the better trades. Your units then recover the next round. You control the battlefield. And in 1.0, when blockers didn't have to counterattack, attacking was really disadvantaged. You would get these board states that clogged up so much where people are just like, I summon a bear and you summon a bear, and we just like keep building up our battlefields, and nobody wants to be the first person to make the move, because if I throw in my units, you can block them and not have your units be destroyed, and then you can counterattack. You got so much more value. So that's kind of the idea behind the Phoenixborn Guard and the mandatory counterattacking from guarding. It made attacking and building your board feel like you could progress the game the way you wanted to, and I think the game is a lot healthier for it. The kind of consequence of it was that like front-loaded first 5 aggressive state that I think players are becoming a lot more accustomed to, and being able to build decks around that. Knights are certainly still a very strong first 5 option, but it's not without downside, and I'm really happy to have seen that, and also having experienced it playing in Shuffle Bus 4, your guys' tournament. I also had a really knight heavy deck, and you can feel the weaknesses of it. I lost in top 4.
Right, especially in a format where we had 7 Jessas and 5 Heralds.
Right.
Like, that's 10% of the field.
Yeah.
Or no, more than that.
It's 25% of the field.
Like 25% of the field.
Yeah.
You're going to run into a situation where you can first 5 a knight, but you have to have like a whole plan around it, protecting it, because 1/4 of the game, so at least like 1 or 2 of your matches in Swiss, you can expect to see like a fear start or a fear plus fester start, or just a hunter's mark on the other side, and you're like, oh well, sorry, Hammer Knight, like
there's a
you
lot
can go to the discard pile.
That can hurt that knight right off the bat. And yeah, so we were talking about backtrack. I think it was that discard cost came in a little bit later in the game, as we were kind of lamenting the way that card draw wasn't really as useful in Ashes as maybe it was expected by players. So having a strong card in the first 5 that had a specific use, in this case countering aggressive knights, but that also let you take advantage of those early card draw effects. So like, yeah, Auric can get an extra card from concentration or insight. Saria draws a card from her ability. So you can then consider backtrack very easily in those decks and still have your traditional first 5 plan. Where a lot of times if that card draw goes to waste, you maybe would rather spend dice doing something else. So I'm really happy with where backtrack ended up. It's not spot removal the way like Fester can destroy anything, or sort of Virtue can destroy anything. It is contingent on your opponent committing the attack. So you do have the option. Do you want to use your Hammer Knight aggressively if your opponent has drawn an extra card and is showing a time power die? You run the risk of running into backtrack. So simply just the existence of backtrack can make control
that was something
players
that we talked about. We talked about backtrack at length in one of the episodes when it was previewed. And, that was kind of the thing that I was saying, was like, this is never going to be like a 3-of card. But in a closed deck tournament, if your opponent just has a turtle, or in Shuffle Bus where you have the open decks or whatever, if you just like have a turtle and 1 in the list, which I would never put a card in my list just as a bluff. I would have to have a list that like would potentially first 5 it in some situations. But if you look at your opponent's list, they have a turtle and a backtrack in their list, and you're just like sitting there on your swordsman or whatever. What do you do? Like, I guess maybe a magic siphon or something, but it's just another thing that like in a first 5 specifically has to be an enormous blowout.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we talk about this a little bit. I mean, it's making the correct play, and like if you watch my game with Matt later this week when it's on YouTube after Ashcon has concluded, there's a number of sequences in there where I can enter the fray his 3-eyed owl and he's showing Golden Veil die. I don't know if he's running Golden Veil, right? Because I don't know his deck list, but is the correct play still to make that play, right? And you have to go, okay, if they do this to me, how bad does it hurt, right? And so these kind of reactionary cards, you have to not get got by them, right? And that comes down to like, yes, it's going to bounce my knight. I know it's going to do that. I just have to be willing to accept that to get rid of it, right? Like, because you can't play scared of it either. So there's a certain level of like, do you have something to do after you do that, right? Like, because if you don't, then it just blew you up, right? But if it's part of your plan to get your knight bounced, and then it turns into my knight attacking is exhausting one of your dice and taking 2 cards out of your hand.
Yeah,
And
this card specifically makes that really rough. You know, when you're talking about your Golden Veil. Like, yeah, I agree that sometimes you have to run something into Golden Veil to like trade with it, but you want to trade like a 1 dice 1 card or 1 dice 1 effect kind of thing for their Golden Veil.
Sure.
Whereas your options for this backtrack are like they spend a dice and 2 cards and you lose 3 dice, or if it's first 5, it's very likely that you will either not be able to play the knight that just got bounced, or you won't be able to play 1 or 2 other cards in your game, because your first 5 should be, like, to the point we just made about how the game has changed, your first 5 should be calculated to where you're getting maximum value out of all 10 of your dice.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm not disagreeing with that at all. You have to, I mean, that's what you have to weigh out, right? You have to weigh out how bad you get got in it, because the Enter the Fray into Three-Eyed Owl and the Golden Veil is like the perfect example, right? Because you're spending nothing to pull a card out of the hand.
That's really free to do. If they spend the Golden Veil in that situation, you're up a bunch of stuff.
Right. But you're not completely, because they still get your owl, which you may not have been planning on having to deal. You know, like you may not be able to plan with. You're playing a first 4 at that point, but.
But so are they.
Right. To add to that, most of the time what Golden Veil hits, and Knight's very similar, is like Golden Veil is, okay, I spend a frog ping I'm gonna use Killer Cactus's term here. We're gonna pester a unit here. So we're gonna ping it and we're gonna fester it. So I'm spending a card, I'm spending 2 dice to watch my opponent spend a card and 1 dice. So we're kind of in a similar place with Backtrack, where my opponent is still going down a dice. In this case, we're going down 2 dice, but we're going down only 1 card, and not even going down 1 card because we get the card back to hand. So it's just not playable in that particular portion of the game any longer. So yes, I mean, Backtrack's a very powerful card, and I think it's great for. I've just given you kudos on this, this design choice, because it's the kind of thing that isn't without downside for the player playing the Backtrack as well. Right, and
the discard cost is really elegant. Like, if for instance Crescendo didn't have a discard cost, it'd be first 5 all the time.
Right. We just see Crescendo's flung first round every game, right? Because
the discard cost is really elegant, because this is a card that's extremely powerful, just like Crescendo. But that cost is essentially just like, you can't first 5 this effectively. But then as the game moves on, then in rounds 2 through infinite, the discard cost is almost meaningless.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not literally meaningless, but it's so free when it's not your first 5.
Yeah.
So it's really good. Like, having that opportunity to cost a card, as essentially you're just like chaining it almost.
Right.
That's a cool way to handle that.
Yeah, limiting it to characters that can plan around drawing a card. I mean, it comes out in a deck with Ash Spirit, which is another incidental card draw that you might not have a way to utilize otherwise. So, the Auric deck kind of introduced this concept of making card draw have a place for control decks, and part of that is making more ready spells that are free to put down, like finding those extra copies of concentrations. If you draw a card that's free to set up, that's a great use of card draw, or having discard costs, like in the Backtrack. There's ways to kind of make that card draw have more value for the defensive or control style player. So I hope even more of that is coming as well.
So let's talk about a card that, obviously, I think at some point might become a bugaboo. I think you know which way I'm going here, but if you're watching stream, you'll know. That's Recollect. Talk to me a little bit about this. I know you love this card. This is why I think it's a bugaboo.
Because I love it. That's
when Neil gets really hyped on a card and he tries to start breaking the game, that's usually when something stupid and crazy happens. And I'm not saying they were there yet, but I'm a little scared about the potential that this card represents as we move forward. I think the card is super. I think it's super awesome from a design perspective. I think this is the kind of thing that on the surface doesn't look scary, but when somebody really puts their thinking cap on and starts to really think through the card pool and some of the interactions in the card pool, it can get pretty gross and potentially pretty degenerate pretty quickly. And so I'm curious what you've seen out of this. Have you seen people try to play degenerate combos with this in testing? How has that worked its way out? I mean, Ben has put it in chat. I'm not going to say it on. I'm not going to put that out in the world quite yet. But
play it with Fallen is what he said.
Yeah.
It's not even the best thing it does.
I've seen the Fallen combo. So the idea for anyone who might be listening is you can use Recollect to find all copies of a given ready spell that you first 5 by meditating a ton of your deck.
Mm-hmm.
And there obviously is a big risk involved with doing that because you're throwing away tons of your resources and you gotta come up with a plan for mitigating the downsides of that. Or you can also just have good luck and meditate them off very few cards. So it's a strategy that I think excites a certain type of player that is looking to find these maximum.
Yeah, Neil's raising his hand if you can't see that right now. His hand is
and that potential is exciting, and it can be easy to fall into the trap of making every design really safe and easy to calculate its utility. But it's kind of an effect that reminds me of really early Ashes where just the potential it represents is so far above what what you see, and it's a daring choice.
Like the ceiling on this card is operating in like Saturn's orbit right now. I'm just gonna tell you that right now. Like the ceiling is way out there.
Well, I don't know about that. Like I've played this card a ton. Obviously, like I've been screwing around with it. Like, and obviously there's like some degenerate things you can do, but because of the nature of Ashes in general, it's really hard to like just go off and win like you can in a lot of games.
Yeah, it's
I only get to do 1.5 things every turn. So drawing 2 cards, which is like in general, you're never gonna get more than 2 cards out of this. I don't think that there's some way that you could like sack a ready spell during the resolution of this to get all 3 or something, but I haven't looked for that. I assume that doesn't work. But what is interesting about this card, just on a level outside of degeneracy, is like there's only 1, 2, like 3 or 4 good, efficient ways to focus a book, and some of these, especially the like older books that may not have been reprinted, or some of the stuff from the upgrade kit, like they have these focus abilities, you'll never see them.
Yeah,
like there's just you have to like start an open memory. You have to like wreck your whole first 5 to focus a Fallen book or whatever.
Right.
And Fallen specifically maybe makes up the difference because that's a card advantage machine. But this card is cool because you're never down anything. And one problem with a card like Expand Energy, for instance, is that I'm playing these draw 2s or whatever the draw 3 for
Generosity,
illusion power is. Oh,
but
Generosity.
You can also Generosity draw 3.
But like those things reduce your decking, right? Like you're actively moving yourself towards losing to fatigue.
Yeah,
this card does not.
But it's not.
This card actually reverses you. Like this is like a card advantage spell that reverses you away from decking yourself. Mm-hmm. And like these are cool things. These are things that don't exist in Ashes at the current time. And to Nick's point, like maybe daring choice is what he said. Like I just like expanding the actions we can take because, Nick was talking about how differently he wanted Auric to play. Well, this is one of those things. Like, only a certain number of decks can really take good advantage from this card, but it is really powerful. Like those are the kind of effects that I talk about all the time. You either need to be like the best option in a slot that's clogged full of things that are all similar, or you need to be doing something that's unique. Essentially it's the same thing twice. It's just that the pool of things in the unique effect is just one. So you're obviously the best.
I mean, obviously, I think zombies are going to be the first place everybody looks for Recollect, right? Like,
right, because that's the book you most want to focus. Is
right.
Probably the strongest ready spell.
Right, but I think there's other things you can do here as well.
I love it with laws.
Well, that's where I was going with this, right? Like,
copies of a single law.
Yep, I think there's this opportunity cost associated with second copy of law in your deck, and then making sure they end up in your discard pile effectively.
Right. At base level, if you draw 2 Recollects, you could potentially set up like 3 consecutive turns of 2 copies of law if you're in play.
Right.
That's a good one, yeah.
So
and that's not looping it or anything. That's just 2 copies of Recollect plus all 3 laws.
Right.
And
those are the kinds of things that I think I'll be curious to see if those things have been experienced, I guess, as we move forward, because they do take a pretty strong shot at some of the key archetypes that exist inside of Ashes. So I'm not fighting against that. I'm saying but it can create some of these situations that can be perceived as NPE, right? And so we want to be. I'm sure that's something that's focused on in testing, is making sure that the game remains a fun experience and not a negative experience for half of the time.
I think it's fun.
Well, you like playing that kind of stuff, though. We've talked about your PTQ playing Prison, right? We did that.
Did you see this card a lot just in your playtesting? Like, were people playing this card aggressively?
Correct.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot. The ideas were there, and ultimately, I came to the conclusion that the super high risk of meditating a ton of your deck is probably fine. The regularity in which you can rely on this card to do its super high level thing is
I guess that probably doesn't take a lot of iterations of testing. Like, you're like, oh, I have this idea that sounds pretty stupid. You play 1 or 2 games with it, and from there it's easy to figure out.
It certainly represents a dangerous potential for other possible really good focus effects, but similarly high variance to the way you might meditate just a few cards versus 20 cards to find that Recollect combo. We already have similar high variance things with just some card draw, like Abundance could also find really good focuses to have early in round 1. I think about the Xander deck that Christian was playing, where he found all 3 Fallen, all 3 Hopper books in one game that I was spectating this season.
Right, and that deck didn't even have Abundance. That deck was just looking at the top 3 with Foresight.
Yeah, he just drew them. Yeah, the Foresight helped filter a little bit. So it's the potential to get those super focuses online really early exists in the game in several ways. Recollect's another way to do it. It's perhaps the most reliable one, but the cost to do so is really variable.
Right. The thing for me that really sets it apart, because if you wanted to play no, I can't remember it. Nami, Encore already is Demonic Tutor if you meditate yourself full.
Sure.
Yeah.
We already have that. The thing about this is that it puts you up a card. I think that makes it a little crazier. And when I say crazier, I don't mean necessarily broken, but
it's a strong contender for an area of Ashes that there's not a lot of ways to do what it does, and here's a way to do it, and it does so pretty powerfully.
And obviously you've played a lot of Auric. Is this a tool that you feel is necessary for concentration? I haven't found it to be that way. I play 1 or 2, but
In my constructed Auric, I have moved away from using Recollect to get more copies of that. But I think in the pre-con, I really liked Recollect as...
it's obviously great for the pre-con. Like, thematically, it's really good.
Meditate away your extra copies of concentration that you've already used, bounce them back to hand, so it's like a way to kind of realize
you can be super greedy and like meditate, see a concentration, put it in the discard pile, and then like try to insight for the recollect instead of the concentration.
Or yeah, a lot of fun things you can do there. And
I don't think that's correct ever, but
yeah, it's a main action for that very reason, to let you meditate and then pull back things right away.
So Ben is already met brewing in our chat right now with Recollect.
So many levels past. I have so many levels past Encore with this already.
Yeah.
But we'll meet up later, Ben.
Yeah. Ben and Neil are gonna end up doing something super degenerate. Watch. I'm gonna make a bold prediction that within 6 months of Auric release, we'll be chaining or banning Recollect. With Neil down with this.
Stainless is the thing we can look towards it if these combos and strategies do ultimately become negative play experience or just too high variance for people to be satisfied with it. Yeah. I think chaining it is a nice way to remove the really awful high-end stuff, but still keeping the integrity of the card.
Chaining it is perfect for this kind of card because, like, what you want to be doing is like meditate your whole pile, set up your perfect spell board with the recollect, and then move on to the rest of the game. Like that, presumably you can win with the perfect spell board. And if you chain it and you're not guaranteed the recollect, like all of that falls apart. So just like the high combo, just like the Huntmaster accelerate thing, like just not having it round one is perfect. Like that solves it.
Well, we'll just see how it emerges. I'm curious if we see any of that abuse happening in SB5, because SB5 is going to be the wild, wild west for that component of it.
I'm excited to play with these cards, man. Way more excited than...
It's so fun to have all the answers at the end of a playtest cycle on how the meta is going to shake out. So
No.
I watch that content really excitedly to see how people are using all these tools.
And don't worry, I'll be vocal enough with you, Nick. If there's a problem, I'll be like, this is not good. But Neil will be on the other side going, no, this is just fine. So don't worry, you'll have the differing opinions. But
bring back River Skull. That's
but we
want River Skull.
We're approaching the end of the show here, so I want to give a last couple of shout outs here to Plaid Hat. I just want to say thank you so much for letting us host Ashcon here in 2021. This has been a pleasure to do, and it's been a real pleasure to have you on commentating the matches and talking to us about these cards that are coming out here soon and getting some insight from you regarding it. And I just gotta tell you, man, the buzz in the community around this event has just been fantastic. So can we just do Ashcon every like 3 months? I mean, can we just this is Ashcon
you got so many more
.1,
you got so many more translucent dice to make.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, you can just make a bunch of molds and at your house to help save costs for Plaid Hat at your house all the time.
He's doing shrinky dinks like in his oven. Like,
guys, I'm baking more dice. All right, we'll have an Ashcon soon. But no, I just want to thank you so much for spending time with us out of your busy day to hang out and celebrate Ashes. It's a game that we love, obviously, to an immense level because we have committed all of our resources to it. So we're excited to see the future of this, what comes after Lulu and Auric. What that looks like. I'm looking forward to preview season once we get these guys out here in November. Hopefully we'll get on a quicker release schedule. Let's cross our fingers that COVID and the supply chains start to get better here for everybody.
Yeah, the boats start coming down the Suez Canal the long ways, not the sideways.
Yeah, and the Panama Canal and, all these different places that seem to be having problems. But, we're crossing our fingers for you guys. We're rooting for you on this side all the time. I mean, that's why we'll stay committed to this and stay committed to the Shuffle Bus and doing the things that we need to do to help continue to grow this for folks. So, we'll be back tomorrow with more feature match coverage. Same time, same channel, same place, different day, as we said yesterday. Day 3. if we get a quick game again, we'll have to figure out what we can do to fill some time on the back half of tomorrow's schedule. So we'll talk about that.
Do something with Recollect. Then
no, we're not going to.
Then that's what
we're not going to put that paint out in the world yet, man. We're just gonna wait till those cards are out. But no, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Maybe we can do some constructed Lulu Oryx type stuff for tomorrow. If we wanted to, Nick, maybe you can bring something to the table.
We have stream again tonight, also.
We do, yes. So we're actually going to be live in 2.5 hours again. So just for everybody that's here, we have Shuffle Bus Season 4 Finals. We watched Inquisitor play his feature match yesterday. He's back on stream tonight playing his Finals match.
He's just monopolizing the Shuffle Bus.
I know. I mean,
he was on stream last week, too.
At this point, we might as well make him a host. I mean, what the heck? And he's playing... boy, my brain is not working.
It's Harold v. Harold.
I know it's Harold v. Harold, but is it Brian? It's Brian B. He's playing Brian B., who's also just a pinnacle of this community. I mean, a real pillar to the Ashes community and the absolute nicest guy you can ever play. But Brian will beat you down and make you feel like you had the best experience of your life while you did it. So I love Brian for that. And so we will watch these two guys duke it out on stream tonight. That'll be the only coverage we'll have tonight. So once the game is over, we're gonna walk away because it's been a busy week of streaming. But nothing on Thursday night. So just know that for a fact. And then we'll be back for the rest of the week on Ashcon, and then we'll be back on regular schedule next week. So yeah, I mean, I'm super excited for everything we're doing. So let's keep this momentum going. Let's get some of these Ashcon players to convert to playing casual matches in Ash Techie all the time. Whatever we can do to help that process.
The number of matches in Ash Techie has been impressive this week. And I know it's because of Ashcon, but I hope people stick with it.
I hope that momentum can keep going because it's such a great way to experience Ashes, especially during COVID and during the uncertainties of it. Plus, when you just kind of do the math on the size of the Ashes community, it's not probably large enough to really foster multiple large communities around the country yet. We're still just kind of in its infancy. I wanted to get to that. Let's get it there. Let's all of us work together to do that. But now's the time where we can use the digital space and the online space to just continue to foster excitement around the game while those local communities get built up. So I'm super, super jazzed about that. So thanks, Cactus. Appreciate you being here with us. Thanks for the compliments. We will see you all in 2.5 hours. Nick, thanks for joining us. See you tomorrow.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, everybody.
Too. We'll see you around.